I work night shifts at a gas station. Before I get too far into this story, I just wanted to say that I'm a 5'3" woman in her 20s. For the most part, it's a pretty quiet job, and the only people that come in are usually truck drivers or Uber drivers. One night, a familiar Uber driver named Chris came in and we started to talk for a bit. As we were talking, a car pulls up in the front of the store with his bright lights on, which is basically blinding us from the window. He sits there for a good 5 minutes before he turns them off. He gets out of his car and is stumbling all over the place. The first thing that came to mind was, great, another drunk. The man entered the store and we locked eyes immediately. I'm the type of girl that always has a smile on her face and tries to be as friendly as possible, so I greet the guy and say, hello, how's your night going? He didn't give much of a response and basically just grumbled. He walks to the back of the store and is looking around. As he's back there, Chris and me are still up front talking and enjoying ourselves. The man finally comes to the front with a drink, and if I remember correctly, it was a Diet Pepsi. As I'm ringing him up, he just keeps giving me the stare. It's making me feel very uncomfortable. He utters out a, wow, who knew such a pretty girl would work at a gas station? I get this from time to time, so it's nothing new, but I responded and just said, oh, thank you. I give him his change and tell him to have a good night. He stood there awkwardly for a couple of seconds, looking like he was about to say something else, but he eventually turned around and left. Chris turns to me and says, that was weird. That guy looked like he was strung out on drugs or something. And I said, yeah, I get those customers from time to time. We watch as he gets in his car and pulls out of the gas station. Chris and I chat for a bit longer, and when he starts to leave, he sees what looks to be the same car pull into the gas station with his lights off. For some reason, I wasn't scared, and we kinda just joked around about it. Chris leaves and tells me if I need anything, just to call him, because he'll most likely be in the area. I say thank you, and he leaves. I'm now alone in the store, and I suddenly start feeling uneasy without Chris here, and start contemplating if I should call the cops or if I'm just overreacting. These types of customers are somewhat normal for this time of night, so I just shrug it off and start to restock some of the shelves. About 10 minutes later, I'm stocking the shelves and I hear the bell ring for when the door opens. I stand up but don't see anyone. I call out, okay Chris, I know it's you, stop trying to scare me. I walk around the store looking between the aisles, and to my surprise there was no one there. The store was small, so it was unlikely someone could hide from me. I grabbed the box of chips that I was restocking and brought them to the back room where we stored our merchandise. As soon as I turned around, the same drugged out guy was standing right at the door of the storage room with a disturbingly wide smile. I screamed and it seemed to scare him because the smile quickly faded and he jumped back a little. I used this opportunity to slam the door and lock it. The guy starts pounding on the door and is shouting in a slurred tone that I can't understand. I yell back and say the cops are on the way, leave me alone. At this moment, I realized I left my phone at the checkout counter and didn't even have a way to call the cops even if I wanted to. I might be stuck in this back room all night, and hopefully he doesn't have the strength to break the door down. He keeps pounding and shouting for a minute or two, and then he stops. I can't tell if he actually left the store or if he just stopped. I look around the storage room for some sort of weapon to protect myself. Luckily, there was a pretty big pipe that we used to sweep stuff out from under the shelves. I grabbed the pipe and waited in that room for a good 10 minutes. I thought to myself, maybe I should wait in here till my shift is over, but who knows if another woman would come in the store and this crazy drugged out guy would harm her too. I cracked the door as quietly as possible and looked out. Nobody was in the store and the front door was propped open. I quickly ran out, grabbed my phone and returned to the storage room. I called the cops and told them the situation. I waited in the back room till they arrived and showed them the security footage. They searched the whole building and never found the guy. They were able to get the model of his car and the guy's face from the security camera footage. They said they'd give me an update if they found out anything. Believe it or not, I stayed the rest of my shift and I still worked there for about 6 months after this. The lesson I learned from this is always have a plan and always keep your phone on you. No idea what that guy wanted, but I'm very thankful that my threat to call the cops seemed to scare him away. I worked as a house sitter for a family that lived in this rural area on a big hill in the middle of nowhere. They would go on vacation somewhat frequently and sometimes weeks at a time, so they would always call me up to watch the house when they were gone. It would literally take me 5 minutes to get up their gravel driveway to the house. The house was very nice and well kept, and they were very generous on the pay, so I didn't mind doing the job. They had me stay at the house at night to make it look like they were still home, and to be honest, having a house like this all to myself was really exciting for me. My duties were to feed the dogs, water the plants, and just overall keep an eye on the place so nobody broke in. I'd usually spend most of my nights laying on the couch and watching TV with their big German Shepherd named Oscar. Now Oscar is very tame and he's trained very well. He would always cuddle up to me and occasionally walk around the house almost like he was checking to make sure nobody was there. Most of the time we'd end up just falling asleep there on the couch, but occasionally we would make it to the guest room. One day, I got there later than usual, and when I walked up to the front door I could hear Oscar barking over and over. I unlocked the front door and Oscar came running up to me. He seemed on edge and constantly had his head on a swivel. We made our way around the house and checked every room and made sure all the doors and windows were locked. After looking around for about 10 minutes, I didn't find anything out of the ordinary, except for the fence gate on the side yard was open. I walked out cautiously with Oscar, but still didn't see anything. I tried to close the gate and the latch didn't seem to hold it closed tightly. Because it was a pretty windy night, I assumed the wind blew it open and Oscar overreacted. We went back inside and went back into our normal nightly routine. I made some quick dinner, fed Oscar, and watered their indoor plants in the kitchen. I decided I'd spend the night in the guest room just to be a little more comfortable, and it was warmer in that room at nighttime. We both fell asleep around 11 at night. I was awakened by Oscar growling lightly. I turned over, looked at my phone, and it was about 1 a.m. Like I said, Oscar is usually well behaved and a very smart dog. Knowing this, I got a little freaked out because if he's acting like this, something must be up. I got out of bed and looked through the windows. Once again, the side gate was open, but to be honest, when I tried closing it earlier, I couldn't get it to latch correctly. I went back to the guest room and just laid there quietly, listening for anything out of the ordinary. I laid there for about 15 minutes, and it seemed like Oscar was calmed down by now, so I slowly drifted off again. Once again, I was awakened, but this time it was a knock at the front door. I shot up in bed and was immediately hit with chills. Oscar jumped out of the bed and started barking at the front door. I just sat there for a minute thinking to myself, who would be at the door at this time of night, especially being this far out in the middle of nowhere? This thought made my anxiety peak and I was full-blown freaking out at this point. I got out of bed slowly and walked to the front door as quietly as possible. Once again, a knock on the front door. I heard a voice on the other side of the door say, "Police, open up." I was so confused at this point, and something just didn't feel right. I quietly go to the living room and peek out the curtain to the driveway. Instead of seeing a cop car in the driveway, I see an old Honda Civic parked just by the tree line. I quickly but quietly run back to the guest room and call the cops. I tell them the situation and give them specific instructions on how to get to the house. The dispatcher said they are sending a unit out to my location. I figured they'd take at least 10 to 15 minutes to get there, so I go to the kitchen and grab a meat tenderizer as a weapon. While I was in the kitchen, I saw someone with a flashlight in the backyard walking up to the back door. I duck down and hide myself behind the island that is in the kitchen. Oscar comes running and is barking and snarling against the back window. The guy shuts off his flashlight and I could hear him going back through the side gate. I sit there for a couple minutes when I hear the car start up and drive away. About 5 minutes later, I can see police lights coming through the front window. I grab Oscar and put him on his leash. We go outside and start talking to the police. He told me that they got the guys at the bottom of the driveway when he was trying to escape. I thanked him profusely, and the officer said he's going to do a thorough scan of the property and make sure nobody else is there. A couple of days later, I found out that these same guys were involved in multiple home invasions around the area. I called the family I was house sitting for and told them the situation. They cut their vacation a little short and came back early. They were very pleased that I was able to handle the situation so well and ended up giving me a big bonus. It's been a couple months since this incident and I still house sit for them. I'm truly thankful for Oscar and don't know what I would have done. I worked the night shift at a motel in a small town outside of Los Angeles. For the most part, a lot of the customers that came in this late were people passing through and they needed a room to stay in for the night. It was usually pretty quiet and I was able to do anything I really wanted to, but I had to keep an eye on the front desk and answer the phone when it rings. I would usually spend my nights playing on my phone, reading a book, or drawing to pass the time. I'd have the occasional customer come in looking for a room, or a call from a guest requesting towels and toilet paper, but other than that, my night would go smoothly. I've had my fair share of weird things happen while working here, but one of them, by far, sticks out the most. One night, around 2 a.m., a man came in looking for a room. I showed him our options and asked how long he was planning on staying. He said he had drove from Northern California and is heading to San Diego and just needed to stay the night to catch up on some sleep. I checked him in, took payment, and gave him the key card. He seemed a bit confused and didn't know how to get to his room. I walked out of the office and pointed to where his room was, which was directly above the office we were just in. He thanked me, and I went back into the office while he got his car and reparked it. He parked literally right in front of the office, which was kind of annoying, but then again, his room was right above me. He started to unload his car, and I went back to listening to music while drawing. Not even a minute later, I get startled by a loud noise. When I look up, this guy's car literally rolled right through the front of the office. I yelled, and the man came running. He got to the office, and he soon figured out he wasn't paying enough attention and didn't set the parking brake. His car was an old Ford Ranger with a manual transmission, and he left it in neutral and the parking brake off. The sloped parking lot let it pick up speed, and it went right through the front entrance and broke the door and smashed part of the wall. Luckily, it didn't gain enough speed to get to where I was sitting behind the counter. I called my boss, and he was very angry, especially since I woke him up so late at night. He came in and talked to the guy and got things all sorted out. I'd say out of the 2 years I worked there, that was one of the most eventful nights I've had.